professional career that her name appears on a Grand Slam's entry list with 0 asterisks beside it. And she is arriving with Tony Nadal standing in her corner, having spent weeks at the Rafa Nadal Academy making technical adjustments specifically designed for Parisian red clay. That is the player Sabalenka's warning is now attached to, whether Sabalenka intended it that way or not.
Can go from one side to another really quick, so I guess
Sabalenka's pre-French Open spring has been a slow-motion unraveling that no one in the mainstream tennis press wants to say out loud, so consider this the place where it gets said. April 28, 2026, Madrid, Sabalenka loses in the second round to American Hailey Baptiste, not a top 20 player, not a Roland Garros semifinalist. Hailey Baptiste, gone before the tournament reached its second week. May 9, 2026, Rome. Sabalenka exits in the third round to Sorana Cirstea, 35 years old, ranked outside the top 50, citing her body as the reason she could not perform. She did not appear at her post-match press conference. Her own coach, Anton Dubrov, had already told media that the team changed their entire pre-French Open preparation this year, because as he put it, the last 3 French Open campaigns saw Sabalenka arrive in Paris physically unwell. 3 straight years. 3 straight years of showing up compromised at the one major she has never won. And then, in the middle of this collapsing clay spring, she walked into a microphone and told the world the tour had become so deep that losing focus for a second was fatal. The press nodded politely. But every player in that locker room heard a different message. Because in the same 2-week window that Sabalenka was exiting Rome early and citing her body, one specific player was doing something else entirely on the same clay. May 5, 2026. First round Italian Open. Alex Eala against Magdalena Frech. Eala wins the first set 6-0, a demolition, drops the second 3-6, then closes the third 6-4. She fights through a full 3-set test and comes out the other side. First point of evidence, she can absorb pressure and still win. 4 days later, second round. Wang Xinyu, seeded 31st in the tournament, Olympic silver medalist, a player who had beaten Eala before. Eala doesn't just beat her, she solves her. 6-4, 6-3, no drama, efficient, authoritative. The Italian crowd, which had never collectively heard the name Eala before this week, began to chant. Now put yourself in Sabalenka's position. You are the world number 1. You have spent the past 3 weeks losing to players ranked outside the top 50 on clay. And from across the tournament brackets, a 20-year-old is dismantling seeded opponents and getting louder receptions with every match she wins. Then came Elena Rybakina, world number 2, the reigning Australian Open champion. 6 feet tall, the flattest ball in women's tennis. Rybakina wins 6-4, 6-3, but Eala walked into that press conference and said exactly what needed to be said. I'm happy with my performance. I don't think it was an easy win for her. She wasn't wrong. Rybakina herself gave 0 statements minimizing what Eala brought. The silence from the world no. 2 after that match was, in its own way, a form of acknowledgement. 3 wins, or 2 wins, and a competitive loss to the second-ranked player in the world across 11 days on clay. Monday through Saturday in Rome, Eala moved her live ranking from number 42 toward the high 30s. The trajectory follows a pattern that has been building since Miami 2025, since the clay experiments of early 2026, since the day this player stopped treating Grand Slams as opportunities and started treating them as destinations she was owed. And that is what Sabalenka's warning was actually measuring. Not the tour in the abstract. The generation that is arriving. The fans who have followed Eala from the qualifying rounds of lesser events to this moment. They recognized it before the rankings did. They saw what the scoreboard is, only now confirming. Now consider who is in Alex Eala's corner for Roland Garros 2026. Tony Nadal coached Rafael Nadal to 22 Grand Slam titles. 14 of them came on the clay of Roland Garros. He did not build champions through talent alone. He built them through obsessive technical precision, through adjusting grip pressure and net clearance and topspin angle, until the clay became something a player controlled rather than feared. He spent decades doing that for one player. The fact that he is now doing it personally, specifically, on an active basis for Alex Eala tells you something the rankings cannot. According to reports from her camp, Tony has been working with Eala on exactly the details that separate clay court survivors from clay court contenders. Higher net clearance, heavier topspin, and, above all, patience, the willingness to build a point over 6, 8, 10 shots, rather than go for a flat winner on ball 3. That is the tactical DNA of 14 Roland Garros titles being transferred, shot by shot, to a 20-year-old left-hander who has already beaten a world number 3 at a major. Eala described the experience the way most people would describe winning the lottery. "Blessed," she said. And then, when pressed for detail about the coaching sessions themselves, "I lost my mind." When the architect of the greatest clay court dynasty in tennis history makes a player lose her mind with Roland Garros notices, whether it wants to or not. Roland Garros 2026 begins May 24. The draw ceremony is May 22. The Strasbourg Open, where Eala is competing as her final clay court tune-up, closes out this week. The bracket math is the conversation happening in every tennis editorial room right now. Does Eala draw into Sabalenka's quarter? If she does, and if Sabalenka arrives in Paris with the same body she described in Rome, the one that was limiting her from performing on the highest level, the potential matchup becomes the most watched WTA match of the year. But the stakes go beyond one potential draw. What Eala is building in this clay swing is the foundational argument for a new geography of women's tennis. Southeast Asia has never produced a Grand Slam contender. The WTA has had its stories from the United States, from Eastern Europe, from Kazakhstan, from Poland. It has never told this story. A Filipina unseated at Roland Garros, mentored by the man who built the King of Clay, earning her spot on merit, that is not a feel-good sidebar. That is the sport expanding in a direction it has never gone. The WTA's own editorial team understood this more than a year ago. In March 2025, their feature coverage explicitly paired Sabalenka's Miami championship with the breakthrough of Alexandra Eala, who stunned Iga Swiatek and reached the semis. The tour's communications arm tied these two careers together. That connection has only grown tighter in the 14 months since. Strasbourg, then the draw, then the red clay of Paris. Every match matters from this point forward.
I think she's committed to it, and what she's showing is, she's always had this tennis within her.
April 24, 2026, Madrid. Second round. Elise Mertens, 19th seed, Belgian veteran, a player Eala had every reason to believe she could compete with. The scoreline was not competitive, 6-2, 6-1. It was over in under an hour. There are two ways a player responds to a loss like that 11 days before a major clay event. The first is to protect the ego, to find explanations, to minimize, to wait it out. The second is to go back to the person who knows the clay best and ask hard questions. Eala chose the second. Within 48 hours, she was back on the practice courts at the Rafa Nadal Academy. 11 days later, she opened Rome with a 6-0 first set. She posted on Instagram after Rome, after the Rybakina loss, in a way that told you everything about where her head was. Rome heard me this time. Grazie mille. Not a lament. Not an excuse. A statement of arrival. The city heard her. The next city on the calendar is Paris. Sabalenka said, losing focus for even a second can end your tournament on clay. She was right. It ended hers in Rome, where a 35-year-old ranked outside the top 50 walked onto the same surface a 20-year-old had just navigated with 2 top 50 victories and a competitive loss to the world number 2. Tony Nadal's hands are now on Alex Eala's game. The WTA's own editorial tied Eala's name to Sabalenka's narrative 14 months ago. And Eala, after absorbing a 6-2, 6-1 humiliation in Madrid, came back 11 days later and told Rome to hear her name. The calendar now reads Strasbourg, the draw ceremony, and then the clay of Philippe Chatrier. Sabalenka never had to say Eala's name. The bracket will say it for her. This is not a storyline the mainstream tennis press has connected fully yet, but the people watching Eala since Miami 2020